Conway from the Australian Stock Report. We'll stick with the volatility theme though, Chris, because you've got some stats for us on the volatility overnight. I mean, what we saw the Dow switch in and out of positive territory 29 times.
Indeed, Ingrid, good afternoon, and gents. 29 times on the Dow, and I think it was closer to 60 times on the S&P 500. That's on a per-minute basis. But you also look at the swing for the Dow. I think it's at its height, it was up around 235 points. At its low, down 130, and we settled obviously slightly below break even. But it just really highlights for me a whole lot of indecision at the moment, particularly in the overnight session. You know, and again, when you pivot back to the broader thematics, we've got this ongoing global growth story, which everyone had been championing, but there's these spot fires breaking out everywhere. So as the panel were just talking about, most recently it's tech, but you know, there's always ongoing things with Trump, tariffs, trade wars. So I think the resilience of the market, and of course people in the market, is starting to wane.
Looking at some of those comments from Chris there, Adam, there's been a bit of talk from guests on the program that there's just a lack of conviction on markets at the moment in either direction. Are you seeing that play out?
Conviction, no, I'm not too sure actually. I certainly think that when you make an investment decision, you've got to have that conviction. You know, you're buying or you're selling. You know, but no, I think conviction comes when there's lower volatility in the market. I think more people are certainly and in higher volatility as well. You sort of I don't know is the answer.
It is a good question then. I'm maybe Rudy. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think sentiment has been shaken.
Yeah.
But is that conviction? Sentiment's not conviction though, is it?
Well, because it does erode the conviction then. Because I mean, I've said a couple of times, and I like this to say it again. There's this famous quote by a boxer that says, everyone has a plan until you get hit in the mouth or in the face. And that's the same with investors. Everyone has a conviction until your share price drops. And then people start getting scared. And I think the sell-off we had in late January, in early February, although it was derivatives driven, everyone has a story about it. But also I think the fact, if you basically look at the ASX 200 accumulation index in Australia, it has hardly been positive for the year. And we're almost going into the 4th month of the year. So for that already erodes conviction of investors, because we ended 2017 where everyone said, oh, we're going to have more volatility, but we will be up. And now that conviction is sliding. And now more people are talking, maybe the peak in January was the peak for the time being. And then all of a sudden investors start looking differently at the market. And then they start looking like, you know what, I have 20% profits in this stock, maybe I should take some. I have 50% profits in this stock, maybe I should take some. And you get the feeling that there's more cautiousness and definitely sentiment has taken a hit here, yes.
I think it comes down to a lot of emotion as well. You know, with Shorten putting out the franking credit issue, we saw a huge sell-off in hybrids, anything that had 100% franking. It was an emotional sell down. It wasn't you know, this is exactly what's going to happen. It was like, what if, and it was an emotional one. So maybe that does play into what Chris is saying with that conviction side of things.
I would then throw in the international as well. I mean, the sentiment in markets is so important, and last year, let's face it, there's nothing that the US president could do wrong for markets. This year, the opposite seems to be happening. He can't do anything right. And people are basically now highlighting the darker side, and that basically weighs upon share prices.
Well, let's bring in Chris on that, because I'm not sure if I quoted you correctly. Anyway, Chris, what do you think on the conviction side?
Yeah, look, I would just characterise what's happening more recently against what happened last year, and I think Rudy was sort of talking to the point then. You know, Trump couldn't do anything wrong. He tried very hard to ruin it for us all. But US markets, you know, they had obviously sessions where they'd pull back sharply, but they just kept rising. It seemed the market could take on all comers, and it just kept going. And it was very resilient. That resilience, as I said, I think is breaking down. Obviously because we've extended further. And again, as Rudy said, you know, people are sitting on profits and they're thinking, oh, I'm going to take some here. But it just seems like for the moment the hits keep on coming. Now, individually, I don't think these hits are all that big. Like the tech example, Facebook will recover from this, but you throw in there, you know, the issues with, say, Tesla, the person being killed by an autonomous vehicle the other week, and all of a sudden, you know, these things are amplified. Individually, they don't seem like a lot, but when you're getting hit in the face multiple times, yeah, I think you retreat back to your corner, and I think there's a little bit of that going on at the moment, as I said, compared to last year when we just kept going higher.
Okay. I want to talk a bit about what you're buying, Chris, as well, because I know you're looking at Boral at the moment. They obviously had a bit of a mixed result, you could say, in reporting season. And there's been varied views on whether they're a buy or a sell at the moment. So why are you buying?
Yeah, so first of all, I'll caveat this one by saying this is a longer-term idea than the ideas that I normally share. So I think that's worth saying at the start. But in terms of this one, it's about the pivoting of infrastructure. So here in Australia at the moment, infrastructure spend is pretty strong. That accounts for about 60% of Boral's revenues. That's Australian revenue. One need only look, I only need to look locally. Southeast Melbourne, they've just built a $2 billion train line, or improved the train line, I should say, and are improving the freeway to the tune of about the same amount. There's lots of infrastructure spend going on at the moment, and when that peters out, probably in the next 1 to 2 years, everyone expects that infrastructure spending in the US will pick up, not necessarily because Trump says it will, but because that country actually needs to start rebuilding now. One need only ride the subway in New York to realise they've got a lot of junky old infrastructure that needs some money spent on it. So it's just about that ongoing pipeline of infrastructure spend, and Boral, I think, is nicely placed to benefit from what's happening here in Australia first and foremost, but then as it pivots to the US, take advantage of that as well.
Yeah, because Rudy, we know, US has pumped up their infrastructure plans as well, and you'd imagine Boral with their fly ash business over there would be well exposed to benefit from that.
Yeah, but they haven't done anything yet. Remember, we had once upon a time we had the infrastructure prime minister. We're still waiting for money to be put in that fund. Yeah?
So this is the US I'm talking about.
Yeah, but in both countries the same thing. Trump has had big plans, but we haven't seen anything yet. Anyway, and so far, we're not going to see anything imminently as well. What I noticed from economists who try to assess what might happen in the years ahead is that under any possible scenario, it will be a long, drawn-out, very gradual process. Infrastructure is not something that comes into place very quickly. I mean, unless you do pink pads in Australia, which we were pushed through. Yeah? But usually it takes a very long lead time, very long execution time, very long time to get the financing ready. Because don't forget, Trump has big plans, but he wants to involve the states because he can't finance it by himself.
Yes.
And that in itself almost guarantees you it's going to be a long, drawn-out process.
He has ticked off a lot of the things that he said he would, though. So you've got to give him credit for that. What do you think, Adam, in terms of Boral?
Look, I think it's a good quality stock. They made the right move to go to the US for Headwaters acquisition. I think that was the right move. It's underpinned potential growth for the story. It's certainly had some issues with some of its other businesses that it spun out. So yeah, really comfortable with Boral, and certainly that infrastructure story is not going to go away.
Yeah,
that's true.
Speaking of infrastructure and sort of construction as well, Lend Lease is another one you're watching.
Cool.
Chris, you like that? Adam obviously does. We'll go to Adam in a second.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a similar sort of theme, but a slightly different take. So first, just pivoting back to what Lend Lease has done exceptionally well recently, that's the Barangaroo project. And there's another project in inner city London called Elephant and Castle, which just shows, their construction and development integration services that they offer and how well they've been able to execute. The Barangaroo project is coming to an end, so they're cashed up. They've also been selling a lot of their other construction sites as well. They just sold a building down here in Melbourne Quarter for north of $500 million. So they've got plenty of cash, and that infrastructure spend in the US, I think, makes it attractive to go over there, look for projects and city redevelopment stateside that, again, as I said, will benefit from that infrastructure spend and make it more attractive. So really strong cash position, and again, pivoting to the US in terms of infrastructure.
So you like it too, Adam, obviously?
Yeah, we've certainly got a buy on it. The buyback is helping support the share price. They reported really well in midway through Feb, and the stock jumped on the back of that. I do like that they do have different divisions: development, construction, investment management. They've got some aged care facilities in there. I think they're sort of trying to unwind a little bit there. But, a great story. It's a global story, and it's one for our clients for that diversification.
Speculations they will spin off their engineering division, which will be welcomed by investors, because that's the one that...
So you like it too, Rudy? You don't have a contrarian view on that one?
No, I can't have a contrarian view on Lend Lease, because it's actually quite a good company, but it is very lumpy, and that's why it sometimes disappoints. With those large projects, it's very lumpy, and it does have some divisions like the engineering division that every once in a while come out with bad news.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we return, though, actually, I'll say goodbye to Chris Conway. Appreciate him joining us today, of course, as always, from the Australian Stock Report. We'll take a break, though. When we return, we're waiting for the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. He will be speaking live in a moment.